Welcome into Fire Mountain Gems and Beads. I'm Patti. I'm a jewelry designer here at Fire Mountain, and today we are going to be making this beautiful wrapped quartz crystal moon. Make sure and like, share, and subscribe, and sign up for our email newsletter. Link in the description below. So what are we going to use to make this beautiful pendant? We will be using this great hand-napped quartz crystal moon, as well as some para wire in 20 gauge, 24 gauge, and as well as some twisted para wire. This is the antique copper finish. The first thing we're going to do is wrap this moon. That will be the beginning of our piece. And we have the twisted wire framing the piece. So we're going to start with the frame. So let's get the twisted wire and we're going to cut off a piece. All right. So now that you have your piece of wire cut, you just need enough to go around the moon and have some little tails. So just a little over a revolution there. I'm going to make it so my tails are going to kind of end up over here on this side of the moon. You can see how they kind of end and then curl up this way. So I just want to leave enough to be able to do that. So I'm going to start here and I'm going to kind of curve the wire around to the shape of the moon like that. I'm just really gently curving it. And you can see that I'm not even using any tools yet. I really don't need to. It's a gentle curve following that moon around. And I feel like that's pretty close right there. And I'm going to grab it where the tip is. And I'm just going to bend the wire like it would be going around the tip. And we'll see if that is working. That's just about right. And then I'm going to take my finger and I'm going to kind of massage the wire the other direction so it follows that inside curve. Let's see how that is. A little bit too close in. I'll pull it out a little bit. That looks really good. Look at how from here all the way up and around it follows the moon. So I'm going to grab it down here at this tip. And I'm going to curve it this direction. And I'm really using a lot of the natural curve of the wire the way it came off of the roll. Okay, that looks really good. Okay. So right here where the wires cross, where the tails cross, I am going to wrap some 24 gauge wire around that to keep that secure. So let's pull off a piece of the 24 gauge wire. Doesn't need to be a lot, 4 or 5 inches. And right at that juncture, I'm going to wrap the wire. So I'm going to clamp the middle right over the juncture with my fingers. And I'm going to wrap with one tail a couple of times. Really nice and tight. Okay, one more time with this tail, and then I'm going to wrap a couple of times with the other end. And then we're going to snip that off on the back side. There we go. And then whenever you snip a tail off on wire work, take your flat or chain nose pliers and just go around in a circle, little kind of bites with the pliers, and make sure all of the tails are tucked in. And then I also like to re-scrunch my wraps together to make sure they look nice and tight. So there we have the basic wrap for the moon. And now we need to make this end curve up and around to the inside of the moon and around a little bit. So let's do that. And really, I'm just using my hands at this point. Now we get to the little bit of curly Q here, we'll use the round nose pliers. So I'll get those in there. I'll make a little curly Q there. Kind of a baby spiral. Just like that. And I'll snip that off. Perfect. Okay. And then the other tail, we're going to make a very small spiral on the other side. So I'm just curving the wire around, letting it curve naturally until I get to the point where I need my round nose pliers. And then we'll finish that off there. And I'll take a look at it. I'm going to bend these up a little bit because there's a little kind of curve. Okay, let's see how that's feeling. Isn't that pretty? It's already starting off really, really nice. Okay, the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to secure the moon into the frame by using the 24 gauge wire. We're going to kind of go back and forth around the front and the back, all the way down. We're going to make some extra little curly cues there for little extra accent. So I'm going to pull off a piece of wire. Give yourself plenty. I'm pulling off maybe 18 inches here. You won't use that much, but it's nice to have it for working purposes. Okay, so when I started this one, I started off near the inside tip here. So right down kind of from the inside tip, I'm going to make several wraps. All right, so I'm kind of clamping that against the frame and I'm leaving about an inch or so tail. And then when you make the wraps, the natural thing to want to do is take the end and put it through. I don't do that because when you take the end and put it through, when you have a long piece of wire and you're pulling it, the wire does all kinds of funny things. It tends to want to kink up and stuff like that. So what I do is I take the close wire here and I push it with my thumb and I push it through the frame. And that kind of distorts the wire the least possible amount. And then I'm going to pull that wrap tight and I'm going to do it again several times. And the wraps should be right next to each other, nice and tight. Okay, great. Now the extra tail here, I'm going to go ahead and snip off. Don't need that. And then again, when you're snipping a tail of wire, always scrunch your wraps together and then tuck it in a little kind of round motion around the piece. Okay, good. And then your wire should end up on the top of your piece like this. Okay, and we're going to kind of fit it around the moon. At this point, I'm going to pick up that moon. And you can see I've left myself a little space to wrap around the frame. That is important. At this point, you can also make some little adjustments. Let's look and see if anything needs to be adjusted. I feel like it's pretty good. I might adjust this outside to be a little flatter. And I might adjust the inside curve a little bit. This is a good time to do that. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to really fit this moon in the frame how I want it to sit. And then I'm going to kind of clamp this and I'm going to wrap it around. So I'm going kind of across the moon and downwards just a little bit. And now this one doesn't do that. This one goes upwards a little bit, but it's a different shaped moon. So I'm going to go downwards just a little bit. And then I'm going to drop that moon now that I know the kind of the trajectory of the wire, how I want that to go. And I'm going to go grab my round nose pliers and stick them in there. And I'm going to add some little loops. So I'm just going to put some loops on the wire. I'm putting them all in the same direction. You could put them in different directions if you want, but just kind of following the pattern of this piece. That's what I did. See, so I've got 2 loops there. Let's do another. And that looks pretty good. Okay. So I'm going to fit that moon back in there. Let's see how that looks with the moon in the frame. Looking good. And I'm going to want to wrap my wire right on the other side here. So I'm going to kind of push it all together so it's on the right plane, so the frame is sitting really on the edge. And I'm going to curve that wire over the moon because it's got kind of a domed surface, and kind of bend the wire against the frame where I want it to be. I'll drop that moon now. And I'm going to kind of try and clamp the wire in place with my non-dominant hand, and I'm going to make a couple of wraps. And we'll wrap it right in place where it is. And you want to try and make your wraps tight. And remember, I'm pushing through the middle rather than threading the end through. Okay, that's good. And always with wire, it's going to get out of place when you're working with it, and you're just going to put it right back in place. So I'm going to grab my moon again and see how that's looking. That is working really well. If you need to make any adjustments, do it now. You want to make sure that these sides are really sitting on the sides of the moon all the way down. You can still adjust this wire back a little if you need to, but I think it's okay. All right, now you can see if you flip the piece, we're going to go from the outside and we're going to go downward a little bit. So let's flip this around. And we're going to go downward, and we're really just caging this moon in the frame. So I want to go right about there, and I'm really pulling my wire around the natural shape of the moon so I know where I want to wrap it, and I'm really pushing it around. And I'll drop the moon again. And so you can see now I have the curvature of this moon in here. I want to keep that. I want to have space for it to cradle it. So when I make this wrap, I'm probably going to grab some chain nose pliers, and I'm going to hold that curvature there so I don't accidentally pull it out of shape. And then I'm going to make a couple of wraps. I'm pushing it through the middle here. And one wrap. So we'll finish a second wrap here. Good. And we'll pick up the moon and see how that cradles in there and make sure it's doing what you want it to do, and it is. And then you can see that we're going to go back to the front side from there. So every wrap you're going back, front, back, front, back. Okay, so we'll push that to the front side. And if you get some kinks in your wire at this point, you can straighten it out. You can use your nylon jaw pliers to do that. All right, so here's the front. I'm going to put my moon back in there, put it right in that cradle that I'm creating with this wire. Okay. Here I have gone down this direction on this one. It went from here down to here. So I'm going to go that way. And, you know, being that these are all individual, you might have to adjust slightly, and that's okay. Do the design however it secures the moon in there. I'm feeling like right here is a good spot. So I'm kind of pulling the wire around toward the back, so I'm getting this curvature here that I want to keep. I'll drop that moon out of there. And then I'm going to make a couple of wraps. And so I keep that curvature, I'm going to use my chain nose pliers to hold that wire in place before I wrap it. Just like that. Push that wire up through. Maybe adjust it a little bit. And then make a couple of wraps. There's one. So we'll finish a second wrap here and bring it around the back. And then again, every time you do this, you're going to slip that moon in there and just check and see if you're cradling it correctly. That looks really good. So flipping it over, we're going to go down this direction and find a place that it's going to naturally kind of sit around your hand-napped moon there. Right there is looking good. So I'm going to drop that moon out of there. You're just going to keep doing this until you really have it enclosed so it doesn't slip out. Grab your pliers, hold that curvature so you don't lose it, make your couple of wraps. And the further down you go, the less space you have to pull it through the middle. Eventually, you'll just have to thread it through with the other end. We can do, I think, one more this way. Okay. We've got our 2 wraps. And slip the moon back in there and make sure everything's fitting nicely. Really good. So at this point, we're going to actually wrap on this curly Q tail. We're right at the perfect point to do that. So I'm actually going to wrap the end of the wire through here because there's not a lot of space, and gently draw all the wire through. And we're going to make a couple of wraps to hold that curly Q to the frame. Okay, perfect. That's looking really good. All right, from there, we'll flip it over. We went down on the back toward the tail. And so we'll do that, and we're just enclosing the tail here. And I'm going to go around the frame. And this is really going to cage this in now. This will be the last time we take the moon out. And I'm really tightening it at this point. I want to make sure that it's really snug. I'm going to wrap around the frame a couple of times. Now I'm just wrapping around the frame. I'm not wrapping around that curly Q that's kind of overlapping it. But you do it however works for you. Okay. And I've got a lot of wire left over here. I can see that now. So I'm going to snip a little bit of that off because I know I won't use it all. And at this point, see how the wire is really coming to kind of a point? Round that out before you pull it through, and that'll keep it from kinking. Anytime it starts to come to a point, you can even use your round nose pliers to round it out a little bit. And that brings it through nicely. Okay. So let's flip it over and look at the other side. At this point, we made a decorative little kind of extra set of curly Qs. So with this shape of moon, I made the curly Qs downward last time, but I have more space on the top side, so I'm going to make them on the top side on this one. Okay, so just take my round nose pliers and I will make a little circle and then move it over on the wire and make another circle. You can kind of see what I'm doing. And let's just kind of adjust the wire here a little bit so we can see. They're kind of on top of each other. I'm going to move one of those circles out a little bit. Okay, let's make one more circle. Might even make, I think that there's room for 2 here. I'm going to make 2 more. Okay, there's one there, and I feel like I want one more, and I'm going to make them progressively smaller. Let's see what that looks like. It's kind of an interesting way to do it. So there I have my little kind of curly Q detail, and I'm going to bring that out to this side, and this is going to be almost the last point. We're only going to wrap it one more time. So I'm going to wrap it around the frame. Let's cut a little bit of that off. It's just too much. So much easier to work with a shorter tail when we know we don't need that wire. Okay, so I'm going to wrap it around the frame. Make it, pull it nice and tight. And my curly Q's kind of moved, the end of it moved up here. So I'm going to move this up here. This is where you can make some good adjustments. Let's see, it kind of lost one of my loops too. So move it around wherever you need to at this point. Kind of losing my curly Q's. You can use your chain nose pliers if you need to. I've got my little itty bitty curly Q at the end. I'm trying to keep the detail of that and kind of flipping back upward. Okay, good. I'm happy with that. Okay. So I'm going to wrap that one more time through the frame. And then we're going to go back and cross over this wrap that's kind of in the middle and wrap this around the frame. And that is going to be the end wrap. That's the last one. I'm just going to mush things around a little bit here so there's space. Okay. So we're wrapping right around above this one that was going downward in the middle. We're going upward across it. One more wrap here. Okay, and I'm going to snip off that extra tail and tuck it in a little bit with the chain nose plier. And at this point, I can adjust things as I need to so they look nice. My little curly cues kind of wanted to go off in a funny way, so I'm going to push those up a little bit. And I'm going to push this tail there, push this tail around. I want to bring this one over here so it's filling up that space better. I'm liking that. And this one, the end is kind of poking up. You know, when you're working with wire, it really does convolute. And at the end, you always really need to make these little adjustments. That is looking so cute. Let's see, my tip is a little funny there. That's better. Just kind of going to squish it together. Look how that changes that. All right. Now we're going to find the hole in this guy. You can look at the back. You can see it easier. There's a hole right here. And we're actually going to make a little hanger for the moon. So let's go ahead and do that. We're going to use some 20 gauge wire here in the antique copper. Same finish. Just going to pull off a piece of that. Okay, so we'll pull off a piece of this 20 gauge wire. And then I'm going to make it fit through the hole here, and I'm just going to let it go straight through. And I'm going to bend both sides up so it's kind of a triangle. So the moon just kind of flows freely from that. And I'm going to let them cross over each other, just like that. Then I'm going to take my chain nose plier and the longer tail, I'm going to bend upward like that. And then the shorter tail, I'm going to clamp right before they join. And I'm going to wrap that around a couple of times to really clamp that spot right there. Sometimes at an angle is better. There we go. I've really got that wire clamped. Then it's just going to get bent around a couple of times. And you want a fairly nice tight wrap there. So I'm going to grab my other pliers and make a nice tight wrap. And on the back side, you want to snip off that wire. And then I can take my other chain nose pliers here and tuck in that tail. Now I can look at my wraps here and decide if they're close enough or I want to just kind of squish them together a little bit. I'll do that. Can straighten out my triangle side here, got bent a little bit. And there is part of our hanger. Then we're just going to make a wrapped loop at the top and then bring it down to meet that. So in order to do that, I'm going to take my chain nose pliers and right against those wraps, I'm going to put the tip. And I'm going to bend the wire right against the chain nose pliers, just like that. Okay. Now I'm going to take my round nose pliers. Let's start on the back side here. And I'm going to go around in a circle, just make a little circle like that. And bring the tail up so it looks like a little lollipop on a stick. And then I'm going to clamp that loop in my non-dominant hand, just like that. And we're going to wrap that wire down. And I like to grab some pliers to do that. Lots of tension on both hands. And you're making the wraps really nice and close to each other until you fill up all the space and snip it off in the back. It's okay if your tail gets all mangled because we don't use it. And then take your chain nose pliers, go around a circle and tuck that in. So there we have our little hanger on our moon. Isn't that cute? Thank you so much for being with us here today to learn how to make this beautiful wire-wrapped quartz rune pendant. Be sure and check out our gallery for more start to finish projects, and we'll see you next time. Make sure and like, share, and subscribe, and sign up for our email newsletter. Link in the description below.